Welcome to the Dumbcast.
Welcome to the less hasty cast, where we've got a wee shade more time to be putting things together, which is nice.
Feels nice not to be doing the shepcast on Wednesday afternoon.
That was a bit much. It was a bit huge.
That was a lot.
My apologies to our loyal viewer for the inadequate audio and inadequate video and inadequate production quality and inadequate most of everything, to be honest. But that's what happens when you've got to throw it together in a day?
Yeah, no, it was very quickly put together, and we had a lot of unexpected changes to deal with as well. So it was not as good as it could have been.
Like a last minute kid going tobogganing. We're flying by the seat of our pants.
No.
Yeah, we were.
It was a good try. Poor analogy.
Well,
I dock marks for lack of goodness.
Welcome to the Analogy Cast. Welcome to the Reformation Cast.
Yeah.
As Lutheran Christians, we are legally required to celebrate the Reformation on October the 31st, the spookiest day of the year, in which Dr. Martin Luther knocked on the door of Wittenberg Cathedral and said, "Trich und tritt," and the Reformation began as of that moment. Back in 1511. 1411?
1517?
1517. Whichever one. Don't look at me. I'm a rotten Protestant.
Welcome to the History Cast.
Yeah, I was thinking about the King James Bible, which is 1611.
Ah, there you go. That's not the Reformation.
I know. I apologize.
It was a different Bible, the Gutenberg Bible. I don't know.
Das Bibel?
That's the one.
Yeah, right. Well,
Auf Deutsch.
Aus Deutsch. I don't know much German.
Yeah, you even said that wrong.
Did I?
You tried to make it too flowery. You're like, Auf Deutsch. It's Auf Deutsch. You have to pronounce every single letter.
I'm mostly UK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Except for the small wedge that is not. Well, welcome to the Ancestry Cast. Welcome to the Every Tribe and Nation Cast.
I mean, we're exploring that now, right?
Right. And welcome to the We Don't Have an Old Testament Reading Cast.
No, we do not.
Nope. This is one of those few weeks in which myself and Amanda on Sunday morning are going to have to go out in front of the congregation, and instead of saying our Old Testament reading today, we're going to have to say the first reading today is from Revelation instead of being from anywhere in the Old Testament. This hasn't happened since, I guess, the season of Pentecost, right before leading up to Pentecost. Pentecost, the last one, where you don't have any reading from the Old Testament. In the season post-Easter, pre-Pentecost, you have Acts, Epistle, Gospel, and this is a very strange week where we have a reading from Revelation instead of from the Old Testament, or in German, das Alte Testament.
I think it's Alte, but good try.
Are these tries even good?
No, they're awful because you also switched into your Brazilian accent there. So
yeah.
You're an awful lot like Lucas Albrecht.
Yes, correct.
Brazilian and German.
And speaking of Albrecht, here's my Bible.
What?
That has nothing to do with Albrecht at all. I was trying to do a little bit of a segue away. Did it work?
No.
Well, here's my Bible, which is the Holy Bible New Living Translation.
The only way you can make it a segue is if you put wheels on it and rode it around.
Is that new material from you?
It is. I thought of it myself right now.
It's pretty good.
I thought so.
It's pretty good. Those segues, by the way, were supposed to have taken over transportation by now.
Well, you obviously don't watch Blippi, whereupon he rides his Segway all over the place. And you know what? You shouldn't watch Blippi. It's awful.
I don't like Blippi.
You shouldn't. It's awful.
My sons were mercifully mostly not interested in Blippi. I think Bruce largely missed him because Bruce would have been too young, or would have been too old when Blippi came out. And I think Luke had a passing interest, but not long. I'm shocked it even exists.
Oh my gosh, I don't know how it does. And the worst part of it is they're awful, but we only ever watch one episode in my house because when it gets to the end, my darling, beloved 2-year-old son says, no, I don't want to watch this one. Then we have to go back to the beginning and watch those 5 minutes over and over and over.
Well, the book of Revelation today?
Yeah, it seems odd to begin with the last book, but here we are.
It's a brief reading, kids.
It's very. If you thought last week's readings were brief, hold on.
This is like 2 verses, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah,
and
it's
they're
literally
all,
2 verses.
Like our longest one is 9 verses.
Woof.
Huh.
Doesn't give much to work with for Reformation Day.
Well, and it's the same readings as we had like for the past 500 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Revelation what? Chapter what to what?
Revelation 14, verses 6 through 7.
Oh, that's so short.
Mm-hmm.
Can I take that one because it's so short?
Yeah, do it.
And I saw another angel flying through the heavens, carrying the everlasting good news to preach to the people who belong to this world, to every nation, tribe, language, and people. Fear God, he shouted, give glory to him, for the time has come when he will sit as judge. Worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and all the springs of water. The end.
The end.
It's quick.
Yep.
Why, given that we're Lutheran Christians, given that we're all about sola scriptura and all that, why do we have such short readings for Reformation Day?
I don't know. The only one I really know why we have is the Romans 8 one, and that's because Luther had a fondness for Romans 8. And it's not even Romans 8, it's Romans 3.
So what are you doing?
I don't know. What are we doing?
It's all pandemonium on Reformation Day. No.
Oh, okay.
Reformation Day.
Let's clear the slates. Okay. I don't know why these readings are so short. It seems bizarre to me.
You'd think that with the people like us, like Lutheran Christians, that have such a fondness for sola scriptura, that we would have bigger, longer readings that dealt more with the...
It seems like it should be like a catchphrase. Now, bigger, longer readings.
Yeah. You'd think.
You'd
because
think.
Like you would think that we would have
like
readings
as much Bible as you could get.
Which succinctly and clearly spell out the theology of grace alone, scripture alone, faith alone, Christ alone, right? Like they would talk about that and like the clear distillation of that. But instead we have this one from Revelation. It's all like, this is for everybody. We're like, okay.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
How many years was it between when Revelation was written and the scriptures were codified? Oh.
Search me.
Because it's interesting. I don't know if yours used the same words, but mine had an eternal gospel, which
I think I had everlasting.
Okay. Which makes me wonder if the idea of gospel in terms of the Bible would have been beginning to come together or not.
Great question. I would imagine that the final codification of the scriptures and like assembled into the codex that we have here before us would have taken place significantly after.
But that would have been the formal codification.
Yeah. And there was an informal one that we know for sure was their 2nd century at the latest.
Okay.
Which means if it's a forgery, it's an old one. You go back to... I want to find that clip. I'm sure I will never find that clip, but I really want to find that clip.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. There's a movie out there called The Prophecy. I have a VHS copy of it directly below us in the youth room. And The Prophecy is a story of, you know the movie The Terminator starring Arnold Schwarzenegger?
I've heard of it, yeah.
Okay, imagine that movie, but instead of Arnold Schwarzenegger as a robot man, it's Christopher Walken as the angel Gabriel.
Wow.
And he's just like throwing people around and throwing them through windows and pulling their hearts out and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, at one point they find another angel who has been killed by Gabriel and thrown out of a window and whatnot. And they go through his pockets and his possession. He has a Bible on him, and the Bible has in it an extra chapter in Revelation. So they say, his book of Revelation has 23 chapters, and they're like, that's weird. Revelation only has 22 chapters. And the coroner who's holding the Bible, he says, yeah, well, we carbon dated it 2nd century. So if it's a forgery, it's an old one.
We found this in the lining of his coat.
It's an old Bible.
Yeah. Handwritten. Beautiful, really. See this symbol? Matches a scar on his neck, exactly the same. That's attractive, huh?
Anything else?
It's a velvet bookmarker.
Cute.
What is it?
23rd chapter of St. John's Revelations.
And?
There is no 23rd chapter.
Oh, maybe this is the teacher's edition.
Can I keep this?
Sign for it.
7825, code 6, 105 North Avenue, 52.
Hey. Final spectrometry came back on that fancy Bible of yours. If that new chapter's a forgery, it's an old one. Carbon dating checks out. 2nd century.
That'll make this Bible the oldest in existence, then.
So don't lose it.
Which is a line that I go back to when I talk about the Muratorian Canon, because the Muratorian Canon is as close to, because people like to tell you about how Constantine codified the scriptures in the 4th century at the Council of Nicaea, and he ruined Christianity at that point because it was awesome. It was full of really cool books that he threw out at that point. But in reality, it's very, very close to what you have in the Muratorian Canon,
Right.
which is 2nd century, which, again, if that's a forgery, it's an old one, because there's not much past that is not like the direct disciples walking around still on planet Earth, right? Like you're getting into the 100s AD, and so it's really tough to look at that and say, yeah, these are just like forgeries at that point.
Right.
Like they're pretty old. And if the Muratorian Canon, which I'm probably going to put up here, has in it all 4 Gospels, the majority of the letters that we see. I think the only real major difference is that it includes the non-biblical book, The Shepherd of Hermas.
Okay.
But like everything else there is like really close to exactly what we have here, which means that there's not a real chance that Constantine just felt like including other, like those books, like the same books in the Muratorian Canon arbitrarily. They had already been used as scripture for like basically ever since there was a Christian faith. So there.
There you go.
Yeah. How boring.
I mean, I think it's interesting, but
We'll see what our viewership does at that point.
that's all right if we plummet off, right?
Maybe. How about how the gospel is an everlasting gospel of every tribe and nation and people and language?
Well, and this is it. Like, that's what I was thinking of. Hence why I posed the question is what this eternal gospel will look like. Because I imagine it actually looking quite similar to what we already have, right? Like if we would profess right now that the gospel is the same yesterday, today, and forever, right? Then this eternal gospel that's being proclaimed in the book of Revelation, I would imagine to be quite similar, maybe to have just more added on, but I can't imagine it differing too much.
I think there's a difference in the gospel and the scriptures, because the gospel is like the good news
Fair enough.
is Christ, the cross. Well, as Paul would say, I came to know nothing among you but Jesus Christ and him crucified, right? That's the gospel. That's the eternal gospel. And everything else that we have supports that.
Right.
That it comes down eventually to Jesus Christ on the cross for the forgiveness of sins of the whole world, sacrificial system over, new heaven, new earth, blah, 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 all that stuff. And everything else is a support to that and helps to clarify it. So the eternal gospel, the salvation of Christ, is for everybody, for every people and tribe and nation and language, which is not probably how the Hebrews would have perceived it, but tough luck for them. And that was, it's easy to forget that back in the 1st century, there was a significant dispute about how Hebrew you had to be saved.
A Christian, yeah.
Yeah. That a necessary precondition of being a Christian was to be Judaized, basically. That you had to be circumcised, keep kosher, go to the temple. Like you had to observe all the Jewish laws and customs. Sort of like how Jews for Jesus does things now.
Right.
You know Jews for Jesus? Yeah. How they'll like blow shofars and like still wear yarmulkes and like all that stuff, even though they're Christians. That would be the expectation for like every Christian would have to be Jewish first and then Christian on top of that,
Right.
which went away because it was for every tribe and nation and people and language, including
Non-Jewish.
including non-Jewish people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, again, it's interesting to see passages like this, passages in Acts where Peter sees the net of animals, right? And they're all proclaimed to be good.
Arise, Peter, kill and eat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things like that, which point to the universality of the gospel, right? The fact that it's not meant only for one specific tribe, but for the entirety of the world.
Right. Which I think unfortunately, we've allowed ourselves to become numb to that. Like we're just so used to that we assume that is the way it always was and is the way it always will be, when it really isn't.
Yeah,
that's a very staggering development.
And again, it fits well with the history of Reformation, right? When you think of the struggle that went into producing a Bible that was readable by the majority of the people, right? Like, that was a huge struggle to get it out of the Vulgate, which was no longer the common language anymore, and into an actual universal language.
What a shame. What a shame that the attempt by Jerome to put the Bible into the vulgar language of the people got so thoroughly co-opted, and they were like, now you can't. Now, even though language has changed significantly, you can't translate it out of this into anything else.
No, because now this is the holy language, right?
Yeah. So we've just done it again.
Yeah.
Like we
It's
did
the
it
same
again.
thing as it was before.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I love how the Bible has in it we saw it on Sunday, where it's Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, right? Where it includes in there an obvious nod to the fact that the scriptures are themselves, at least the New Testament, is itself a translation.
Right.
Instantly. Like there's no other version. There's no magical Hebrew version.
And that was
Aramaic version.
before it was being made available to all peoples, right? Like, it's already, I guess, foretelling the fact that this isn't just for the Aramaic speaking folk. It is for people who won't understand the Aramaic, who wouldn't understand that bar obviously meant son of. Like, it's being made known to more and more nations.
Right. And like it's clear from the beginning. So like you would think that if you were translating it out of the Greek into the Latin and you had to translate rabbi, which means teacher, it would be pretty obvious that even the original text itself is a translation. Like, there's no magical version that isn't a translation you can get to out there. They all are, from the word go, and designed to be that way so it can be read by as many people as possible. And when we forget that, we do that at our peril. And we're like, no. This is the language of God. Like, this is the one that he wants. When in reality, from the word go, it's translated.
Yeah.
There's nothing in there that's not translated, like at least in the New Testament. You can talk about the Old Testament differently, but the New Testament, all translated from the word go by necessity, because it's designed to be spread and read.
Well, and even the Old Testament, like, although it is written in the Hebrew, like, you look far enough back into Genesis and the Tower of Babel, right? Like, that's still not the intention, right? Like, that we've moved beyond one universal language. We see that as part of our humanity, that we are a peoples of many different tongues, many different languages. That's the way it is.
I'll let you have the last word there. That's good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Should we roll right along to our Old... just kidding. There are no Old Testament readings. Instead, let's move to Romans 3.
Which is not Romans 8, and it's throwing me off. But it's still good. It's still good.
All scripture is God-breathed.
All right, Romans 3, 19 through 28. Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be stopped, and the whole world may be held accountable to God. For by works of the law, no human being will be justified in his sight, since through the law comes knowledge of sin. But now the righteousness of God has been manifested apart from the law, although the law and the prophets bear witness to it. The righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ for all who believe. For there is no distinction, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and are justified by his grace as a gift through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God put forth as a propitiation by his blood, to be received by faith. This was to show God's righteousness, because in his divine forbearance he had passed over former sins. It was to show his righteousness at the present time, so that he might be just and the justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus. What then becomes of our boasting? It is excluded. By what kind of law? By a law of works? No, but by the law of faith. For we hold that one is justified by faith, apart from works of the law.
Good.
That's it.
Well, what else do you want?
An exposition, please.
I mean, this is okay. So we're still Reformation people, so we're still going to be trying to do Reformation things. And one of the things we're going to do is to talk. Now, our struggle now is less against like the larger Catholic Church that has like massive, overwhelming power, influence, authority, that kind of thing. And our struggle is now more towards people who don't understand that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God.
Who
Right,
would
like-
fail to acknowledge sin.
Yeah, yeah. That's like a major part of the struggle now is that people will have an extreme inability to work out that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. People will view themselves as being generally okay. Now they'll really see sin in everybody else. Boy,
Oh, yeah.
will they!
Yeah.
Like, and we all do. We're like, oh my gosh, other people are the worst. Am I right?
That whole plank in the eye.
Whoa. Yeah,
Yeah.
all the time. But it's real hard to point clearly and decisively to your own sin. And that's the real poverty in our view of things is we understand sin in everybody else except in ourselves. Part of the reason why our I'm going to get censored on this one. Part of the reason why our coronavirus response has been as flawed as it has been is everybody is just posting all day, everybody about how terrible everybody else is at following
Right.
the COVID rules. Meanwhile, hey, it's still spreading. So
Yeah.
I guess lots of people aren't doing a good job, huh? Which makes sense, obviously.
Of course.
Of course. But you've got to work out that none of us are doing a great job on this one. It's the same thing with environmentalism, where it's easy to point everywhere else and say, other people should do more. Yeah, obviously. But at a certain point, your own individual sins, problems, choices, and whatever are connected to the bigger picture. And if you're wondering why it is that that if you are such a great person, but everything around you is a disaster, you're not a great person either. You've sinned and fallen short of the glory of God too. And that was so phenomenally instrumental in getting people to do the right thing in the past, was that they acknowledged that they weren't perfect. Once people think that they are perfect, they're like, yeah, I'm doing a great job. I have nothing to change. Good luck getting them to change their behavior then.
Yeah.
Like, yikes, they don't.
Well, and this is part of the first part, right? In verse 19, that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law.
Yeah.
Like, you first have to realize that you are under the law, because if you don't, then as you say, it'll apply to everyone but you, right?
Always.
Like, sure, that person murdered, but I didn't, because, I was just looking out for myself. I did what I had to do type thing, right? You
Yeah.
can make that exemption for any of the laws, any of the things that we know we ought to live by, but we try and talk ourselves out of.
Try and talk ourselves
We
out.
do talk ourselves out
All
of.
the time.
All the time. Yeah, so we talked about being under the law, speaking to the law.
Yeah.
And of course, we get into the verse 27, verse 28, where what becomes of our boasting, it is excluded by what kind of law? By a law of works? No, but by the law of faith, right? Where we are constantly reminded that it's not our works that are uplifting us, upholding us, right? It's the works of Christ, essentially, the gift of faith given to us through his work, not ours.
Part of the reason this is so evergreen is because, like, we're the closest to Romans that we've ever been. Like, not to the book, but to the people. Like, we are now, like, if you think about what Rome would have been like in the time of Paul and Christ, like, we're pretty close to that now,
Yeah.
man. Like, we're a nice, fun, cosmopolitan,
Polytheistic.
polytheistic, hedonistic empire.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
That is like an economic.
Where everybody's
yeah.
working for their own pleasure, essentially.
Sure. Yeah. Where you do have effectively temple prostitutes, and you do have effectively all the things that all the debauchery and the drunkenness they would have had in Rome. We
and
got
they're
that
being
here.
worshipped and upheld, right?
Yeah.
Like I'd say right now, that human sexuality is being as worshipped as it ever was in Rome, right?
I think there's a definite case to be made for that, and like that's part of the reason why the Book of Romans is as evergreen as it is now, is because we keep on being Rome again, like pre-Christian Rome. We keep on going back to that. We can't help ourselves.
No.
The empire gets to a certain size and it becomes Rome.
There's nothing new under the sun, right?
Well, I've heard that from
or twice.
Ecclesiastes.
That's the one.
Yeah. It's a good book.
It's a good book.
They're all good books.
Yeah.
It would be nice if we learned something, but we're real busy. But the thing we should learn is a return to the simple teaching that says that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. You don't get any progress through your works. You get progress through the merits of Christ, who, as the great high priest, gave himself up as the propitiation.
I love it when they use the word propitiation because, as you mentioned on Sunday, there's certain words that are just Bible words, right? And propitiation is a Bible word. Like,
Yes.
I can't help but think of the New Testament specifically when you hear the word propitiation.
It is, even though it's not only a Bible word, it's a Bible word.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's like pews, right? When do you ever hear anybody talking about pews other than in a church, right?
Yes.
But
Although where were we? Yes. The boys and I were at the RCMP Heritage Center yesterday, along with my wife and her mother as well. But we were all at the RCMP Heritage Center. And Luke was looking for, he has to do a little scavenger hunt. He was looking for a particular flag, and he couldn't find it anywhere in the Heritage Center. And I said, maybe it's out in the narthex there, right by where we went in. So there are certain terms that I'll still use because I guess it would have been the lobby, but I'm going to call it the narthex because
the foyer.
Going to call it the narthex.
Yeah, that's funny. I love it.